But our focus today remains Budget 2020. Nirmala Sitharaman delivered her second budget, the longest ever, 2 hours 47 minutes. Some of the big takeaways. Income tax rates have been lowered for those earning between 7.5 lakhs and 15 lakhs, but they will have to be, the benefits will only come if exemptions are not availed. The dividend distribution tax has been scrapped for corporates. The government will sell a stake in LIC through an IPO. Insurance on bank deposits up from rupees 1 lakh to 5 lakhs. Civil offences under the Companies Act to be decriminalised in a move to reach out to wealth creators. 4,400 crores to fight air pollution in metros. 8,000 crores for quantum computing. The Delhi-Mumbai Expressway is being promised in 3 years as part of a 100 lakh crore project package for infrastructure. More tourist spots through Tejas trains and museums in several heritage sites. The fiscal deficit pegged at 3.8%. Now, all of this, of course, has predictably led to questions on both sides. While the government insists this is a growth-oriented budget, the opposition has launched a scathing attack, with Congress MP Rahul Gandhi questioning the Modi government's commitment on job creation in particular. Our top story tonight is just how Nirmala Sitharaman's budget has been received.
The new economy is based on innovations that disrupt established business models. Artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, 3D printing, drones, DNA, data storage, quantum computing, etc.
Amid economic slowdown, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented a second budget in 7 months.
6500 प्रोजेक्ट्स का निर्माण बड़े पैमाने पर रोजगार के अवसर तो बढ़ाएगा, देश के विकास के हर क्षेत्र को वो एक नई ताकत देगा और प्रोजेक्ट डेवलपमेंट के जरिए युवा ऊर्जा को नई ताकत देंगे.
As the government hailed the budget as an Aam Aadmi budget directed to revive growth. The opposition, though, remained unimpressed.
I didn't see any concrete idea, any strategic idea that would help our youngsters get jobs. I saw a lot of tactical stuff, a lot of repetition, a lot of rambling, nothing concrete. So it's the mindset of the government. All talk, nothing happening.
Former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram slammed the government's income tax rejig.
How do you call it a budget for caring society? I've just given you food subsidy has been reduced. As far as LIC is concerned, it's highly debatable. Now tell me anything in this budget, which gives a boost to mining, construction or manufacturing. There's nothing.
Slew of opposition CMs and leaders hit out at the centre, accusing the government of doing nothing to revive the ailing economy.
पूरे देश को उम्मीद थी और ये दिवालिया बजट है, तो किसान के लिए कुछ नहीं है इसमें और गरीब के जीवन में कोई बदलाव नहीं आने वाला, नौजवान को कोई नौकरी और रोजगार नहीं मिलना है, तो यही हालत पूरे देश की होगी. इसीलिए इतना लंबा बजट पढ़ा गया जिससे लोग आंकड़ों के मकर जाल में फंस जाएं.
With slashes in the personal income tax structure, the government has targeted the middle class, calling it a growth budget. But the opposition claims that this is not enough to kickstart the economy. Bureau Report, India Today.
So is this really a growth-oriented budget, or is this a big missed opportunity by the Modi government? Joining me now is Panda. He's BJP Vice President. Also joining me, Nilesh Shah, MD Kotak Mahindra Mutual Fund. He's also part of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. Yogendra Yadav, National President, Swaraj India. Kiran Mazumdar, Chairman of Chairperson Biocon. Shashi Tharoor of the Congress Party. Appreciate all of you joining us. I just want each of you to give me your big takeaway. If I were to ask each of you, and I want to start with you, BJ Panda, since you are a representative of the government, to those today who are criticizing your government for a missed opportunity, saying there is no big idea that is going to drive this consumption and growth cycle, given the scale of the crisis facing the economy, what would you say to them?
I think those who are saying that there is no big idea would not recognize a big idea if it dropped down and hit them on the head. Because there are many very, very big ideas here. The immense thrust to infrastructure has been spoken about since last year and has been detailed. The finance minister has taken forward her announcement on December 31st of the 103 lakh crore pipeline for infrastructure projects and has given many specific details about what are being done, such as 100 new airports. The thrust that is being given to the farm sector and particularly to areas like fisheries, where schemes are going to be focused on creating jobs for rural youth, is a very, very big idea. The idea of taking, of spending 6,000 crores this year, of taking fiber to the home connectivity in a huge number of panchayats throughout the country is a very big idea. But of course, it would not seem like a big idea to those who are just focused on living in the big cities.
Okay.
But similarly, there are many, many other big ideas in terms of,
Jai,
for
hold
example,
on.
let's take
Jai,
Swachh
hold on to
Bharat.
your thoughts.
When
You've
Swachh
given-
Bharat was first emphasized.
You've given
Sorry.
us some of the important thoughts that you believe are being
All right.
missed in our search for headlines. You seem to believe that the real detailing of the budget is the strength of this budget. Let me take that to Shashi Tharoor. You may have heard what Jai Panda says. To that extent, Dr. Tharoor, do you see this budget as the rest of the opposition seems to be seeing as a missed opportunity, or do you believe that this budget at least creates some kind of a base to put the economy back on the right track?
No, listen, I must say I was disappointed, Rajdeep. And first of all, the speech was as long as a complete T20 match, but not even half as exciting. There was literally another first innings, as it were, the first hour and a half. There was literally a recitation of old bromides with absolutely nothing new to go with it. The second hour, you suddenly found some interesting developments ranging from the new money for culture and heritage in museums, which I fully approve of, and then the possible benefit to the Aam Aadmi in terms of people earning less than 12.5 lakhs would suddenly get a 50% cut on their taxes, provided they're willing to forego all deductions. So if you're earning that much and you don't have an auto loan or a car loan or a home loan or whatever, you might well benefit from that, significantly get more money in your pocket. Those were the kinds of positives that I could see, but it was very hard to find anything else. We all understood before the budget that increasing rural demand ought to be a priority because the demand side had been neglected by the government's measures so far, and the rural areas particularly neglected, with the agricultural sector in grave distress. And we see nothing for that. I mean, there are farmers committing suicide to the tune of 31 people a day, and instead you've got the budget speech suggesting that they can make money selling solar energy to the grid instead. But the purpose of the government is to try and help farmers make money through farming, but there's nothing concrete to help them there. Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme allocations are down at a time when they haven't paid the states what they're supposed to for the work already done by these poor workers. And then you look at stories coming out that the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Yojana checks, which were announced and given with much fanfare in time for the elections, the third installment due in October has still not been paid to a majority of the farmers. It looks like the rural emphasis of the previous budget was just an election sop, and there's nothing there for them now.
You know, I know Yogendra Yadav, you track the rural sector closely. I'll come to you in a moment, but Kiran Mazumdar Shah has been also waiting by for a while. Ma'am, do you also see this budget, in a sense, as a missed opportunity? You know, industry doesn't seem to have reacted, so in the manner that one might have expected. We were calling this a do or die budget this morning. Has this budget done enough really to pull the economy out of a sense of a slowdown?
I think, this budget is well intended, in the right direction, and it will at least start pulling the economy out of dire straits. So that's my view, because I think they've actually painted on a very broad canvas. Maybe the budgetary allocation is inadequate, but at least if we start at least utilizing this budget immediately and implementing on this budget very rapidly, we can see economic revival. But if we are going to take a long time to implement what has been stated in the budget, then I fear that it won't serve the purpose.
But will private sector investment pick up? That's the question that I'm asking. Do you see private sector responding positively to the budget?
You know, so one thing I would say is that bringing down corporate tax rates to as low as 15% for the manufacturing sector is seeing investment in this manufacturing sector reviving a bit. And of course, there's a lag phase. When you invest in manufacturing, the returns on that investment show up maybe 2 to 3 years later. So you're not going to have an immediate impact on the the benefits of that investment. So that is something that we will have to be patient about. Having said that, I think we need to see many more export incentives, because that is something the industry can benefit from, especially in view of what has happened in China recently due to the coronavirus. I think we should really start incentivizing our export sector and make ourselves so competitive that we can basically take advantage of the current geopolitical and geo-economic situation and start getting some of our sectors to compete very, very effectively with China.
That's from the industry point of view, exports. Let's come back to rural areas, because there has been a cut in Manrega allocations, which Dr. Tharoor just now pointed out. Yogendra Yadav, your sense, has there been a shift in priorities from the election budget of 2019 to what the government is claiming is a growth-oriented budget, but the critics are claiming is simply a muddled, mediocre budget?
Rajdeep, I must confess, Dr. Panda is absolutely right. I missed the big idea when I heard this speech. I found that I learned a lot about Sanskrit, Kashmiri, Tamil, even French. But I kept looking for something on rural and on unemployment. Then I learned something about history, about geography, about literature. I wanted to learn something about economics, which I kept missing in the budget. So I did not get that big idea. But being somewhat old-fashioned, I do not listen to budget speeches for their lyricism or the lack of it. I listen to budget speeches, budget for that matter, for allocations. I'm not into intentions. Honestly, I have no way of getting into the heart of the FM or the PM. I want to see a budget for its allocations. Then I sat down and looked at the allocations for rural and agriculture, something I know a thing or two about. I happen to know something about all the schemes I talk about, Mr. Panda. And then the big idea hit me. It hit me on my head that this is the most anti-farmer budget in the last 10 or 15 years that I have tracked. And the reasons are the following. This is not an empty allegation. Number one, FCI allocation, which is meant for procurement, has been reduced from 1.51 lakh crores to 75,000 crore rupees. 76,000 rupees of a crore rupees of a cut, and not even 2 sentences in the budget speech to say what was happening. Is it an attempt to conceal? Is it an attempt to fool me? Second, 2 schemes which are meant to improve procurement, PM Asha and the price support scheme. In both cases, budget has been slashed. Third, Manrega, the last option for agriculture labor. Actual expenditure this year projected to be 71,000 crore rupees. It will actually end up being a little more than that. And the projected budget for next year, 61,000 crore rupees. Fertilizer subsidy slashed by 9,000 crore rupees. That sounds like a big idea to me.
Can I?
And then I added up all the various small items there on skill, etc. Rajesh, just last point. Job and skill development, all the items put together. Last year was 7,260 crore rupees. This year they are 5,372 crore rupees. So the big idea must lie outside rural, agrarian and employment. I'm still looking for that big idea.
You're still looking for the big idea. Let me turn to Nilesh Shah, as someone who's closely associated with the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, Kotak Mahindra Mutual Fund. Your sense, what is that big idea? If I may ask you, Nilesh, do you see a big idea here?
there is one big idea on intent, but it needs to be executed. The first big idea is that taxpayers should not be harassed. If we can create a good tax charter and execute it on ground, I think this will be one big idea of the budget. The second thing is contract enforcement. We all know in India, contracts are never enforced. There is a rule which says that if your check bounces, you will go to jail. But 4 crore checks are pending, 4 crore cases are pending in the court of law. This budget talks about strengthening enforcement of Contract Act. If we can execute it on ground, businesses will flourish. The third thing and the most important thing in budget from a business point of view is that criminal liability will be taken out from civil acts. A businessman doesn't want to be punished criminally for an act done in the faith of business. If we can execute this on ground, and the budget talks about that this will be removed not only from Companies Act but also from other act. If these three things can be done, entrepreneurship will be rewarded. But obviously outside of budget, many things have to be done. And one most important thing which needs to be done is the flow of credit. This year, the credit is down compared to last year by about 5,17,000 crore. If your credit goes down by $72 billion, you cannot expect your GDP to sustain the growth.
The question is, what has this budget done, of course, to ensure that credit offtake is greater? There are questions being raised over the liquidity crisis. Has the government done enough, not just in the budget, but off budget as well? Jai Panda, you're hearing all these critiques, and I think somewhere in these critiques is a sense that the finance minister is Miss Tinker Woman. She has tinkered here, tinkered there, but there is no big idea coming, the kind of big idea that industry needs to restore confidence, that is needed to put money in the pockets of rural India. There is a sense that there is a pushback, there's a pullback despite this so-called 16-point program that the finance minister spoke on agriculture. Has there been, was it because the government didn't have the headroom, that it didn't have the resources at the moment? There is a fiscal problem, which is why allocations are lower in rural India, and there is the absence of a big idea to tackle the real problems of liquidity of MSMEs and those who are really hurting.
Well, let me again reiterate. First of all, a lot of advice had been coming in that the government needed to step up expenditure to boost the economy, to give an economic stimulus. And you can see that it has taken a conscious decision to push the fiscal deficit up to 3.8%, and that has enabled a lot of big expenditure commitments without going into the 4% range, which can then cause other negative effects such as country rating. But let me tell you something. If you look at disinvestment, for the first time, government is now going to be disinvesting profitable companies in the public sector, such as LIC and BPCL. Now, this is a very big idea.
No, it's a positive.
Because in the past, the government used to wait until companies became... I'm sorry?
It's a positive. It's been seen as one of the few positives in the budget that you're willing to actually go ahead with the disinvestment of LIC.
Absolutely. And similarly, if you look at the increase in the FPI's limit in corporate bonds from 9% to 15%, that is actually very, very significant, because the focus on the bond market is something that all knowledgeable commentators have been speaking about. If you look at the expansion of the gas grid to go from 16,000 kilometers to 27,000 kilometers, that's a very big idea.
But what about those at the bottom of the pyramid, Jai Panda?
Some of the critics, I think, are being unfair.
What about those at the bottom of the pyramid, the MSMEs who have been hurting?
If you look at the bottom of the pyramid, I've already So I think you heard specifically the finance minister's steps announced to help out the MSMEs. And if, for example, the audit floor being raised to 5 crores per annum for small businesses, MSMEs, is being very widely appreciated by small businesses. That removes a lot of red tape and a lot of Inspector Raj harassment type of situations. That's very, very dramatically positive for MSMEs. But let me make one quick point. You know, for the last many months, and some years, we had been hearing about the need for tax reform. And since last year, the corporate tax was simplified, that those who were willing to give up exemptions would get a much lower rate. For last so many months, there was a demand that it must be done for individuals. And now it has been done for individuals, but yet you will see a lot of cribbing.
No, there's
yes,
a lot
the
of
tax is
confusion.
lowered only
More
if
than
you give up
cribbing,
the
it's
exemptions.
confusion.
But that's exactly what was done for corporate.
Mr. Panda, more than cribbing,
No,
it's confusion. There's a sense of confusion that I will have to give up my exemptions to get these benefits, and it's for a very small tax. It is for specific tax brackets.
That is the bottom of the pyramid of the tax bracket. Among the taxpayers, this benefits those with the lower income levels rather than at the higher income levels. So the numbers of taxpayers who will be benefited will be much more, and there should be no confusion, because this is precisely a replication of what was done for corporates and what for last so many months everybody was asking to be done for individual taxpayers. And similarly, dividend tax being taken out from corporates is something that people were asking for years now.
Sure.
And when it is done, you find people either not being clear about it or some people complaining about it.
It's also the markets giving it a thumbs down at the moment. So it's not just people, it's the markets as well. But the word being used in this government, Shashi Tharoor, is this is an Aam Aadmi budget. They are claiming this is a budget for the middle class. They're referring to the tax rejig as an example of it. And therefore they claim that this will eventually put more disposable income in the hands of people. They hope that this will revive consumer spending. You don't seem to share that.
Doesn't the common man in the rural areas need the Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme? Where's the money for that? Doesn't the poor farmer need PM Kisan? If the government thought it was such a good idea once, where's the money for that? Doesn't the poor ordinary citizen of our country require better education, better healthcare? Where's the money for that? We're looking at an Aam Aadmi budget only in one significant respect, the tax break. If you're earning between 5 lakhs and 12.5 lakhs, and you don't have a home loan, you don't have a vehicle loan, you don't have an auto loan, this is probably a good deal for you. You'll suddenly get a lot of money in your hands you weren't planning on having, and that could be money you could spend usefully to stimulate the economy. But that's just one set of beneficiaries. For everyone else, it's extremely unclear what the details of the budget will actually reveal. And let me add that the macroeconomic picture is also distressing, Rajdeep, because our fiscal deficit target has again been missed, as they have missed it every single year for the last 6 years. I pointed out in my budget speech last year to Mrs. Sitharaman that the revenue projections are totally unrealistic and could not possibly be met. And I can say I told you so, because that's exactly what's happened. They haven't met they have fallen a long way short of revenue projections. Tax collection is down. Where are they going to get the money from?
This whole income tax rejigging is being seen as the big headline by some. Kiran Mazumdar, Shah, how do you see it? Do you see it lifting consumer confidence? Will people start spending, or as I come back to it, is this being seen as tinkering?
Yeah, I think they could have been a little bolder with those kind of measures taken for the middle income, part of the population. I think they could have actually done something like had a 15% blanket taxation up to 15 lakhs. I mean, that would have been a bold statement. But, nevertheless, at least people will get a little more money in their hands. Now, it remains to be seen whether they will save or whether they'll spend.
Nilesh Shah, we are coming back to that, where, the jury still seems to be out, Nilesh, whether enough has been done to revive confidence. At the end of the day, this is about reviving investor confidence. There was a slash in corporate tax 3-4 months ago. It didn't really revive the animal spirits of the economy. What is to say that the present tax rejig is actually going to lead to more disposable income, where people will be more tempted to spend rather than to save?
Rajdeep, if we see the benefits given, not necessarily by the government, but by the environment ecosystem, the GST tax rates have fallen from 14.4% to 11.6% as per RBI statement. That's about $30 billion in the pockets of consumers. The 7th Pay Commission and pension revision is putting 100,000 crore annually in the hands of government employees. The e-com losses incurred and funded by venture capitalists is putting 50,000 crore in the pockets of consumers. The farm loan waiver, which has happened over last 6 years, has reduced 4 lakh crore of debt from the farmers. And telecom rates which have dropped has taken away 1 lakh crore from the pockets of telecom companies. It has gone into consumer pockets.
But the consumers are not spending.
Despite all this money, there is consumption slowdown. So there is something else also working. There is something else also which is working, and that is related to one, lack of credit availability in the economy. If you don't create enough credit, growth cannot be sustained, and this is outside of the budget. Second is related to high level of interest rates. Clearly at that level of interest rates, entrepreneurs are not willing to invest. So we have to balance both consumption and investment, and credit flow is very, very critical with lower interest rates and encouraging entrepreneurship together, which can revive investment. If investment revives, growth will automatically come.
You know, this credit flow issue, and I want to come to someone who tracks the markets very closely. In a moment, I'll be joined by Saurabh Mukherjee. He is someone who tracks the markets very closely. Remember, the markets have given a thumbs down to the budget, and we need to find out why that has happened. But before I come to Saurabh, Yogendra Yadav, you know, there is, as I said a little while earlier, the finance minister spent almost 45 minutes on a 16-point program that she says is going to, in a way, focus on agriculture. And here you are today saying this is an anti-farmer budget. Is that political rhetoric also at one level, Yogendra Yadav? What more can the government do given the fact that they have a resource crunch at the moment? What would you have liked to see that they didn't do?
Rajdeep, today's budget was a critical budget, and it was a difficult budget. Critical because the country is witnessing slowdown, critical because the government needed to do something, and difficult because the resources are very limited at the disposal of the government. So minimally what I expected was an honest budget. I wanted my finance minister to take the country into confidence, to say, look, we are passing through a difficult phase. This is the problem. This is what the likely consequences are. I'm sorry, I don't have enough money to give for all the kinds of things, and I'm doing only this much. That much honesty I would have really appreciated, and the country would have appreciated. What we have instead are attempts to make virtue out of weaknesses. That 16-point agenda, now I heard carefully, and this is something I do know something about. None of those 16 points touch upon what are the top 2 or 3 issues of Indian agriculture. Number one, farmers' prices, price realization, getting remunerative prices. She in passing mentions MSP and assumes everyone gets MSP. They do not even mention the fact that most farmers do not get MSP, and the schemes which are there to ensure that farmers do realize MSP, their resource allocations have been slashed down. Okay. All the things that everyone mentioned, all these are very, very small ideas, Rajdeep, and none of those ideas have any serious allocation with that. Jai Panda mentioned fisheries. Do tell me, Jai Panda, what is the allocation for fisheries? How much has it changed? And how much has the agriculture budget changed? I would look at the budget as a text, as a piece of literature. Please read it as allocations. That is what budget is. And that is where it completely fails. While all of us have believed that figure of 3.5% deficit, please do remember the deficit is already something in the range of 5.5 to 6%. And this is not me, this is the Comptroller and Auditor General of India saying our deficit is close to 6%, which is what it is today. And this is very serious.
Before I take a break, I want to come to you, Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, on the point that has also been highlighted today, the fact that the finance minister on more than one occasion said, we respect wealth creators, I will ensure that there will be no tax terrorism. I know that industry has been for long complaining about tax terrorism. The finance minister has introduced a tax dispute redressal system saying by March 31st, if you want to settle your disputes, you can do so without paying penalty or interest, and also suggesting that she will put in place a tax charter, which Nilesh spoke about. How do you see that? Is that enough to reassure businesses on the so-called tax terror?
No, I think one positive news was decriminalizing the non-compliances as per the Companies Act, which I think is very important. As far as tax terrorism is concerned, I really want to see how it really plays out on the ground. So yes, having an online redressal system will help, but I think we need to see, how tax terrorism is going to pan out in the future, because not just the income tax, there are many other agencies who are very aggressive when it comes to terrorizing people.
Okay, let's take a break at this point. When we return, there's plenty more to talk about. This is a budget special on a day when Nirmala Sitharaman has, some would say, come into her own, others would say it was a missed opportunity. Either way, she didn't miss the opportunity to recite a Kashmiri poem. And of course, the poet saint of the budget, Thiruvalluvar, made famous by Chidambaram, and now the Tamil legacy carried forward by Miss Sitharaman. Back in a moment with plenty more. Listen in.
Sir, the five jewels, Pini in my Selvam, Vilaivinbam, Amam, and Inbam. Prime Minister Modi, Ayushman Bharat for health for all is Penny in mind. Selvam, wealth creators will be respected in this country. Selvam, Vilaichal, having good crops, farmer PM Kisan, doubling of income, use of fertilizers and proper growth leads to surplus in horticulture, surplus in Silhan, surplus now.
Welcome back to our special coverage, Decoding Budget 2020. Now our panel is being joined by someone who should be able to tell us about the tax issue, which seems to be troubling a number of people. Daksha Bakshi is head international taxation at Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas. Appreciate your joining us, Daksha. Give us your sense. There's an element of confusion as to what exactly this tax rejig really means when exemption, given the fact that you will have to forego exemptions. How do you read it? Is this actually going to simplify tax procedures?
Well, as far as the individuals are concerned, for those in the up to 15 lakhs of rupees of income, yes, it may possibly does simplify for them. But those above that, I don't believe that there's going to be much benefit to them. And in that sense, this whole suggestion of giving a tax break, so as it were, is really not very useful to people in the higher income brackets. And for them, it would work out to be very, very difficult situation, and really not giving them any much benefit at all. And what is very important here is, unfortunately, that anyone who wants to claim this benefit will have to compare the two computations and see which one works out beneficial to them. So it's going to be a complex.
So basically, the chartered accountants will be in business. That's very clear, that the chartered accountants will need to decipher a lot of what the budget has done. Let me turn to another special guest who joins me at this moment, former Deputy Chairperson of the Planning Commission and someone who's been involved with budget making for more than 2 decades, particularly when he was part of the Manmohan Singh government. Montek Singh Ahluwalia, your sense of this budget? As I said, through this debate this evening, some people are saying this is a play-safe budget. Others are saying that the finance minister has made a genuine effort to at least address some of the core concerns when it comes to the slowdown. How would you describe the budget?
Well, I had hoped that the budget would give a sense of how the government is going to address the economic situation, which is actually rather serious. I mean, we are in the middle of a very sharp slowdown. It's possible that the economy has bottomed out and that in the third quarter it won't drop any further, but certainly we're going to end the year somewhere around 5% or a little lower. Next year, the finance minister says the budget could be, the growth could be 6 to 6.5%. most likely it'll be much closer to the lower end of that number. Now, one view could be that you just accept that and say, well, that's not bad and we're going to work on it. But at the same time, we are reiterating the target of getting to $5 trillion by 2024. Now, if that's a serious target, that required an average growth rate from this year onwards, something like 9%. And that's simply not feasible if we're going to end up this year with 5 and maybe next year with 6. So one issue is that the budget seems disconnected with the targets that we are asserting. I mean, if we're really serious about those targets, the budget has to do a lot more, and it hasn't. That's one point. The second point that worries me is that, I had hoped that the finance minister would take this opportunity to come clean and say that, look, we had targeted a fiscal deficit of 3.3%, but actually, because of the way the budget deficit has been calculated, it was much more than that anyway. Instead, what we've now got is an assertion that the deficit will only go up by 0.5% of GDP to 3.8%, and next year, instead of being 3%, which was the original target, it'll be 3.5. And this 0.5% is what the FRBM review committee had said was a tolerable margin. Now, the fact is, and every knowledgeable person who's commented on the Indian situation has said that the budget numbers are misleading and that the actual central government budget deficit is something of the order of 5%, if not higher. So, we should accept the fact that this has been happening and recognize that it's that much higher, and then produce a credible plan to go back to 3%. Instead of saying, well, it's going to be 3.5 and we go down to 3. So I think the credibility of the fiscal deficit numbers should have been established, recognizing that, yes, it has been misleading, but now
in a sense, what Dr. Ahluwalia is saying, Jai Panda, is the reality check. This constant desire to talk up the economy at a time when the economy requires serious micromanagement of critical areas, whether it's NBFCs, whether it is the banking sector, whether it's MSMEs. Do you believe that somewhere the government could have been a little bit more honest about the state of the economy, Jai Panda?
With due respect to Dr. Ahluwalia, I would like to humbly disagree with some of the aspects that he has pointed out. Now, this questioning of the data and especially the deficit is not a new thing. It goes back many, many years. Even in the last years of the previous government, before Modi ji took office in 2014, you had similar issues crop up, and that is why in this budget you have seen the finance minister make a commitment to working on making sure that the data is more credible, and we as a country we need to do that. But besides that, despite the fact that the growth rate slowed down, and I agree with him when he says that perhaps it has bottomed out, because if you look at the GST collections, the bottom was September, and since then it has been creeping up and has been going up above 1 lakh crores for the last 2 months now in a row, or 3 months now in a row. And where I agree with him is this, that I think it has bottomed out. I think things are improving. And if you look at a global perspective, the last 12 to 18 months has been negative throughout the world, and in this gloomy scenario, India is looked at as one of the bright spots from around the world. So I would not be as pessimistic.
Okay, the markets are being pessimistic at the moment. I said it's the biggest drop on budget day since 2010. Saurabh Mukherjee, who is really one of the more erudite market watchers, one of the more intellectual market watchers, joins me. What's the sense? Why has this happened, Saurabh? What is it about this budget that has troubled the markets so much? Is it irrational expectations, or did the budget of Nirmala Sitharaman miss something?
I think part of it is the market's own fault. I think in our country we have many market participants who tend to build all sorts of irrational expectations of infrastructure stimulus, real estate stimulus, and honestly there isn't any money for any stimulus. So I never could understand why people were getting excited on that count. But at the same time, one has to say there is one specific aspect of the budget which is perturbing, which is that on the NBFC crisis, we didn't hear anything by way of meaningful remedial measures. Neither did we hear much about what can be done to resurrect the PSU banks. Instead, the FM urged the RBI, the FM requested the RBI to give the PSU banks more time to restructure their SME debts. And that's quite distressing to hear. You have an NBFC crisis and then if you restructure SME debts, it's not the best idea. So the middle class tax cuts were a positive, the DDT abolishment is a positive, LIC IPO great. But on how do we get our financial system back on its feet, we didn't get to hear anything. And I think that spooked several people out there.
You know, Nilesh, do you go along with that? That is going to be critical to revive the economy, getting the financial system back on track. I know that there have been attempts in recent months on recapitalization, on looking at NBFCs and trying to see how they can be supported. But the fact is it's not worked. What is to say that what has not worked over the last few months will work as a result of this budget?
It has not worked because we haven't made a full attempt. The NBFC securitization was announced in the last budget, where up to 10% first-time loss was supposed to be taken by the government. The total amount sanctioned was 1 lakh crore. But till today, in my opinion, disbursement is not more than 10 to 15,000 crore. So we must ensure that there is availability of credit to all the people who need it, whether it's SME borrowers, whether it's real estate sector, whether it's NBFCs. We have made announcements, but they have not been executed on the ground.
You know, that's exactly the challenge that most governments have faced.
You
know, Nilesh, I'm running out of time. The real challenge that most governments have faced is that of execution. And that remains the dominant challenge for all the well-intentioned schemes and announcements that are being made. But I want to come to you one final time, Kiran Mazumdar Shah. What was the one thing you would have wanted to see in this budget that has missed out? Where was that bold? Was it the boldness that was missing, the big bang that was missing? Or was it simply that the vision was unclear? Modinomics remains unclear.
Well, you know, I was really hoping that exporters would get a big reprieve, and I thought they will extend SEZ or they would introduce a new export scheme which will give you tax holidays and it will encourage investments for exports. The only mention I heard was assemble in India for the world, but I think, you know, manufacturing exports need a lot more support in terms of tax incentives.
Okay, I think we've heard different voices. The attempt was made to get a diverse range of voices, to get a sense of where individuals stand in the debates that now underlie Budget 2020. As the document is read carefully, I'm sure more opinion will come out. For now, I appreciate all my guests joining me. It's been a long day. It's been a day when the talk has been about the money. Show me the money, as they say. Has Nirmala Sitharaman done enough, or is it a missed opportunity? The jury, as I said, is still out. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.